Hello everyone, I am Sneha, lecturer, Department of Physician Assistant, SNS College of Allied Science. Today we are going to see about permeability and transport. Permeability and transport. Permeability is the cell membrane's ability to allow specific ions, molecules and substance to pass through via passive transport or active transport. Here I have attached the image of permeability. Permeability simply means the cell membrane allows certain substances entering into the cell. Transport mechanism enable essential molecules to cross the barrier, maintaining the cellular homeostasis. This transport mechanism will allow certain substances to enter the cell and also will not allow certain substances will entering into the cell. Because to maintain the cellular internal environment, it has some mechanisms through the passive or active processes. Here is the image of primary active transport and secondary active transport. Low membrane permeability to high membrane permeability, the ions, large uncharged polar molecules will be restricted, small unchanged polar molecules will be entering into the cell, small hydrophobic molecules also will enter into the cell. Usually the cell membrane will allow the smaller molecules and also restrict the larger molecules. By allowing the larger molecules, it will have some energy active transport to entering into the cell. Next is mechanisms of membrane transport. Transport is characterized by its energy requirement and its direction. Usually the passive transport does not need energy, but the active transport need energy for molecular movements inside the cell. Passive transport, down gradient, moves substances from higher concentration to lower concentration without metabolic energy. Usually for the higher concentration to lower concentration transport, they does not need energy to move the substances. In passive transport, the first one is simple diffusion. Direct passage of small nonpolar molecules like oxygen and carbon dioxide will easily go through the cells and also some lipids through the bilayer. Next is facilitated diffusion. In facilitated diffusion, uses transmembrane proteins such as channels or carriers to move larger molecules or polar molecules. Usually smaller molecules will not need any energy or channels or carriers to move into the cell, but the larger molecules need any channels or carriers to entering into the cell, such as glucose ions that cannot cross the hydrophobic lipid core alone, so they need channels or carriers to enter into the cell. Next is osmosis, the specific diffusion of water. Diffusion is for molecules, ions and others. Osmosis specifically for water transport. Specific diffusion of water through the membrane, often aided by a specialized channel proteins called the aquaporins. Aqua means water, porins means proteins, so it will allow the water molecules entering into the cell. The next one is active transport against the gradient. Usually active transport needs energy to move the substances. Move substances from lower concentration to higher concentration requiring energy input. In active transport, the first one is primary active transport. It will directly use the ATP hydrolysis. The sodium potassium pump is a vital example. Exchanging 3 sodium ions out for 2 potassium ions in. Secondary active transport uses energy from an existing electrochemical gradient to move another substances. Next is vesicular transport, also bulk transport, move larger particles or quantities of substances using vesicles. Vesicle is a sac-like structure. It will move the larger particles, so it is called as bulk transport or vesicular transport. There are two types of cell materials will occurs in the cell membrane. The first one is endocytosis and also exocytosis. Endocytosis means bringing materials inside the cell, into the cell. Phagocytosis, cell eating, or pinocytosis, cell drinking is the example. Exocytosis is the exporting material out of the cell, so such as hormones or waste. So bringing materials inside the cell is called endocytosis. Exporting materials outside of the cell called as exocytosis. Here is the image of endocytosis, vesicular formation, exocytosis. So endocytosis bringing materials inside the cell, exocytosis moving the material outside of the cell. So here is the second image of vesicular formation. Factors influencing permeability. There are certain factors affects the permeability. The first one is solubility. Lipid soluble molecules pass more easily than the water soluble molecules. Lipid soluble molecules also called hydrophobic molecules. Water soluble molecules called hydrophilic molecules. So the lipid soluble molecules can easily move to the cell. Size and mass. Smaller molecules can easily move into the cell, but the larger molecules need energy, carriers or channels to enter into the cells. Next is charge. Ions and charged molecules are strongly repelled by the hydrophobic interior of the bilayer, require protein assistance. So by the protein assistance it will move into the cells. Next one is temperature. High temperature increase the kinetic energy, typically increase the rate of diffusion. So high temperature means high rate of diffusion, low temperature means low rate of diffusion. So temperature also an influencing factor of permeability. The transport matrix summary. Simple diffusion does not need any energy. Facilitated diffusion also does not need any energy, but active transport need energy to move the substances, and also vesicular transport also need energy to move the substances. Active transport and vesicular transport will pass the molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration. So obviously it will need the energy to move the molecules inside the cell. In vesicular transport it will move the larger molecules, so it will need the energy. Thank you.